if we're going into, oh no, we're afraid of a recession, let's not impulse buy and be afraid and all the what ifs. That stress and that worry just creates a lot of overwhelm for you. It doesn't change the situation.
Yes.
Welcome to Reframe and Reclaim. We are Courtney Huckabee, a psychotherapist,
And Jen Harris, an interior designer who have teamed up
to reflect,
challenge,
and reframe your mindset in relationship with your personal belongings.
Join us as we discuss and declutter all of the stuff that keeps us stuck.
Learn to intentionally create environments with improved function and design that cultivate peace of mind. Find the reframe.
Start your reclaim.
Hi, welcome again to Reframe and Reclaim. I am Courtney Huckabee.
And I'm Jen Harris.
And today we are here to talk about surviving tax day. So it's a very stressful day for most of Americans.
Right.
It's a day that not a lot of people look forward to, but with taxes, people are sometimes rethinking cost of living. They're thinking differently about how they consume. They're thinking about how they can save money. And so we want to talk about reframing and reclaiming our mindset surrounding how we use our money.
Yes. And that's one thing I think a lot of people have at top of mind right now. There's, in addition to taxes, right, like inflation, grocery bills seem to be rising, and incomes aren't rising at the same level. And I have several friends who've been laid off, and so a lot of people I know are re-looking at how their spending is used,
right,
and how their money is going to be distributed. And there's a lot of stress that comes with that too.
I know, and we talk about stress and spending. With I remember COVID at one time. I don't know if I don't like to remember COVID very much,
right.
But during that time, there was so many people who were hearing, things are not going to be able to be shipped, and trade is going to be shut down. And I remember people buying out all of the bread, buying out all of the toilet paper, and then and milk, and so. With that, it's the stress of the what ifs. And so I go into impulse buying, and I go into hoarding, and I go into overspending when I really need to balance that a little bit better.
So what is it? So what is it that you tell your clients whenever they're thinking about all these stressors in their life? Because I'm sure you have people coming in all the time, with
life
these
stressors,
topics.
life stressors, money stressors, family stressors. Economy stressors, especially, with change in politics right now in the world. And so I always say, let's kind of be right here, right now. Let's do the what is instead of the what ifs. Sometimes if we go into all the possibilities of what may happen, we get into a spiraling
kind of doom scrolling, right?
Doom scrolling, catastrophizing. We kind of find these places of going to really dark, challenging places, which actually increases our stress. It increases our anxiety, it increases our worries, but that doesn't help anything. And so, we want to be informed, we want to be aware, but we want to be more of what can I do instead of what I don't have control over. And so really looking at, well, how can I look at my income, my lifestyle, how I'm using my finances, and those kinds of things is really helpful because that's what we do have control over.
Yes, and I think that is really hard for people to, and me included, right? When I'm in that moment to reset myself and look at control, like what I have in control. So is there something people can do, like a breathing exercise or something to help refocus their mindset whenever they feel themselves spiraling?
Right. Honestly, in life, we have very little control around.
Don't tell me that.
With the world around us, I tell people so much, what are you doing to contribute to this? Or what are you doing to help this situation? So really looking at, taking a step back, what can I do in this situation? Looking at your finances, looking at your budgeting, maybe rethinking how you purchase things. I think, Amazon's really wonderful and convenient, but we're also looking at, okay, do I really need all that stuff? A lot of people are looking into resale shops. And so like reusing, recycling, upcycling. And that's also kind of part of your thing that you're really passionate about is not over consumerism and fast fashion, fast,
Yes.
purchasing of things.
Yeah, and I will say, so I have, over 15 years experience in the world of retail, and I was a product designer. I've designed products that end up in people's homes. I've traveled overseas and seen factories and how things are manufactured and brought back to the US. And so I was in that world and I was like, yes, I need all of this. Isn't this so cute? And it's so inexpensive, so my house definitely filled up with things that are cute. I like them, but are they really serving me in my needs? And for me, I had to take a step back and think, do I want this thing? Because for me, like, I'm frugal. I don't go out and spend, $300 here and there, 500, 200. It's all little microtransactions, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever I really added up those small transactions that,
Right.
My weekly Target run, it would turn into anywhere from, 40 to $100, $200 a month. And so I had to think, are those purchases worth that price? Or would I rather spend that money to have like a really nice, dinner, or go for a weekend getaway, or put it towards a vacation later? And so to me, when I thought about it, those things were more important. Those experiences were more important than the items I was bringing into my home. Not to mention like the mental toll it was taking. It's like, now I have these other items that I have to care for and find a place for and put out. And that takes my time and energy away as well.
Yeah, I think that is something that so many people lose track of. Is they're like, it's only $5, it's only $2, it's only $12, whether it's, going and getting a coffee for the morning, or, grabbing that cute little thing for, the kitchen table. That's a cute decoration. But when you really start to reframe and be aware of how you're spending your money, what you're spending your money on, you get to think of, is this more of a priority and a value for me, or would I rather have something different? And that's something we talk about in our book. It's like this opportunity cost. So do I really want that $6 coffee? Or can I surpass, overlook that and maybe save up that $6 cup of coffee a few times a week and use that towards buying eggs?
Right.
I know everyone's talking about eggs right now.
Or if it's like, like this shirt, this designer or something or other, or this, higher end item I was wanting, maybe I can save up in a month or two. And because I don't know about you guys, I'm sure everybody's experienced this with Amazon or something else, where it's like at the end of the month, I'm like, how did I spend this much money?
I'm so guilty.
I didn't think I spent this much. And it's like, oh, no, you did. I'm like, someone stole my card. Nope.
Right.
Nope, I did that.
Well, and I think that is so important, of like the awareness of those micro purchases that they do add up. But the fear that we're talking about, the stress of the economy, the stress of, affordable living and saving up for that really great trip you want to go on. I think if there's more awareness of what I can control, and having awareness of what I'm doing now, and reframing how I'd like to do that differently, we can reframe how we are spending and reclaim that money for things that are more cost effective, more valuable, more of a priority for my lifestyle and my home.
And I'll say one thing I've started to do, and I did this in COVID, and then when things relaxed, like I kind of went back, and then now I'm diving back in, but with meal planning and with groceries. So I would try to, try new things. It's like, oh, I'm going to experiment with this, but that might require buying this one spice that I might use once, and trying out new foods. And so I'm really sticking to, now I know what my family likes and eats. I'm sticking to those menus. And if we're venturing out and trying new things, it might be like going out to dinner once a week, or, trying new foods that way, but really keeping our core stuff the same. So that way we have consistency in our grocery bill. We know what to expect. And we also, aren't having items that are kind of being wasted, And another way my husband and I navigate that is we have our shared shopping list on our phones that we can both collaborate on. Some people do it through Google Docs. You can do it through notes on iPhones. But then we have a checklist, and we can add to it, we can take away, but we have consistent a consistent shopping list that we use every time.
Well, and talking about food that you want to try or might be great, it takes me back to my pantry that
Oh, yes.
we reframed and reclaimed. I was one of our first clients before we wrote our book.
Not only is she the author, she's also a client.
We live what we preach, and so we're walking the walk. I remember going through my pantry and looking at all of the food, taking it all out, and noticing how much food I had.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I had 2 6-foot tables
Yes.
full of canned goods, dried foods, cereals, snacks, and how much of that went bad. But it was because I think I would like to try that one day, and then I never got around to meal planning and actually preparing that food. Or, that'd be nice to have just in case. And then I went and made my usual food and didn't buy that or cook that other food. So I think it's really helpful for, like you said, having a plan, looking at what you have, and what me and my husband are doing more recently, because we've noticed how much food, unfortunately, we've been wasting, is what do we have at home? What can we make of this? And so we are making new recipes. We are trying new things. I'm like, okay, so we've got salmon in the freezer and we've got this rice. What can we put with it and to make it delicious or something a little different? And so we might find some frozen vegetables, or I might find a can of another soup or something that I'm like, oh, I haven't had this yet. So we're trying to reframe and reclaim unwasted food, but also not wasting our money with buying something and not really using it.
And one thing I noticed you noticed as well with your pantry, like Courtney does have a good sized walk-in pantry. It's not huge by any means, but it has a lot of storage. And the amount of food that came out for that size of space, I was really surprised at. And one of the things we talked about is how, you can forget things are there because it's buried behind other things.
Yes.
So now that you've reframed and reclaimed your pantry and it's organized, have you had less waste in your food, or what's been your outcome?
Yes. One thing we did, which I really never thought about, was definitely thinking outside of the box, is we created a space that has different sections, and we kind of reorganized where the sections were. But for like some of the dried foods that like pasta or rice or beans or canned foods that had excess of, we actually found an additional space in my garage on a shelf. So I would kind of go shopping on the shelf before I went shopping in the store, but I wasn't having so many items in my pantry that they got lost.
Yes.
And I think that's been such a huge help. And we still go shopping in the garage, which is really great. But it's helped me and my husband really look at what we have, what we need, and realize like our grocery bills weekly, because of that, have really decreased.
Yeah, having that backstock area, I think, is really important. And it kind of goes back to our conversation a couple weeks ago about like our closets even, and about shifting, with the seasons.
Right.
Like you might have space for everything, but just by taking like the stuff you're not using out this season, it makes it so much easier to shop. It makes it so much easier to see what you have. And you're not spending that mental decision fatigue trying to figure out where everything is. And just simplifies the process.
And finding a system, whether it's for your closet, whether it's for your pantry, whether it's for your budget or your checkbook, really looking at those things, being aware of what you have before we feel out of control and fearful and stressed. And so I think a lot of people will say, well, I don't have the money for that, but maybe you already have that in your home. Maybe you already have that food. Maybe you already have that outfit that you could reuse. Or thinking of consignment shops, thinking of things where people have used them before, but they're not using them anymore. Even in our book, we have places, if you're not using your items anymore, where to donate, how to sell your items. And there's some really good items out there.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody's been on social media lately, but there has been an influx, I've noticed, at least in my algorithm, that people are thrifting more and showing how they're upcycling things from the thrift store. And people have found some really cool like name brand stuff. And I know that's not the typical outcome, but it's still a resource for people. Because I remember in high school, I was always thrifting and going out and looking for cool vintage finds.
We didn't have as much money.
Yeah.
As a teenager, you're like, I'm getting, $8 an hour, working 10 hours a week at your job if you're working, or an allowance or birthday money. So you had limited funds, but we found some really fun things.
So how can people reframe their mindsets? Because I know one of the stressors too, right? Like there's the stress of like increased costs, But then there's also this stress of like, well, I have to keep up with what so and so has, or if I'm at my job, I need to dress a certain way in order
Mm-hmm.
to get this promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so, how can people help step back and not get influenced by the whole American ideal of consumerism and keeping up and,
Right.
having to have the next best thing?
Well, we say that comparison is so challenging because it really does, me against, or me,
Mm,
looking at this other person and how I'm deficient from this other person. So we try not to compare if we can. But even if it is, I have, I'm an owner of my own company. I'm kind of the leader of our company. There are some other ways to dress a certain way. There are consignment shops, resale
hmm.
shops, but there's also like rentals. And
Yeah.
so there's some people who do like renting clothes. And so I know a lot of professionals actually in my circle who I'm like, where'd you get this amazing blazer or this great dress? And they're like, well, I rented it. And I'm like, that's wonderful, because then you can kind of exchange things in
Hmm.
and out, but you have to include that in your budget.
Yes.
So if I'm not shopping and purchasing and maybe using it once, using it twice,
Hmm.
it might be more cost effective to do that. But I think the most important part of reframing is saying, how do I feel about me? How do I feel about this outfit? How do
Mm.
I feel about my home? How do I feel about my car? And not worrying about keeping up with the Joneses, because honestly, a lot of Joneses may
Are in
not
debt.
have the, it looks like they have the finances to live their lifestyle, but honestly, statistically, most Americans are in some kind of financial debt.
Yes.
So for me and my husband, we try our very best to enjoy life, but it's very important for me to live within our means.
Yes. Yeah.
And so doing that, it may look a little different than before we were married. We have a bigger home, a bigger mortgage, two car payments. Maybe it goes down to one car payment, zero car payments. But we have decided, in our home, like my husband paid off his car and he was like, I want a new car. And I'm like, I want you to have a new car, but we also need to pay off some of our debt. We
His other
also
goals.
need
Yeah.
to save up for this, vacation we want to go on. And so we've had to decide
Hmm.
how to reframe our priorities and reclaim what is the value for us, what's important to us.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was the big key for me, is like the evaluating, like, is X more important or is Y more important? And again, there's no right or wrong answer. You just have to really
What's
look
for you?
inside. Yes.
Yeah, and that's not cost opportunity. Some people may say, I really do want the newest version of this car, and that's wonderful, but not going into a place of excess stress,
Hmm.
and excess worry and burden financially to do that. Finding where I can make this a priority while still living a comfortable life.
Yes. And I think too, it is really hard for us sometimes to think, long term and big picture for our microtransactions that are happening
Right.
today, right? And so it is, if you look at something before you buy it, if you're going to be putting it on your credit card or you're going to be
Hmm.
going into debt for it, is it worth having this item if I'm still paying for it a year from now? Is it still worth it, to
And
pay
the interest
interest
that
on it?
comes with that,
Hmm.
and so I do think it's really great. I'm not a financial professional, but being aware of your finances is so
Hmm.
important. Being aware of understanding how credit cards work, credit scores work, how mortgage interest works, those kinds of things, and just being an educated consumer is so
Yes.
important.
Yes. And so again, like, with that impulse buying, because I get it, it's strong. We're seeing advertisements all the time. It's super cute. It's only
Marketing's strong.
$5. And so it's really hard for us to say no when you're having all of this
Mhm.
input that's telling you yes, right? And so some of the things I do when I look at something, if it's cute, I'm like, do I already have something that's similar to it? That I already have. Have I been wearing that item or using that item, or have I not? Is there something I would rather spend my money on than this item?
Right.
Where is this item going to be stored, and how am I going to care for it? And so trying to really take a step back and ask myself those questions in the moment have helped. Also, I've put it in my cart. And then whenever I get back to the end of my shopping trip and I look at what's in my basket, it's like do I still need it? Or even like have the cashier ring everything up, leave this out, see what your total is. And then it's like, do I really want it, need it? And make a decision there. Because there's nothing that says once it's in your cart, you have to purchase it. You know, there's still plenty of time to change your mind.
That's something that me and my husband do. We have a shared like online cart of shopping. And so he'll put something in the cart, I'll put something in the cart, and then we come together before we purchase anything. So communication is really great. And it's not saying, do I have permission? It's like, how do you feel about this? It's kind of what I need right now. If it's something small, again, those micro purchases, we might not always do that. But, you know, whenever it's something of, you know, my husband might need something for the garage, or I might want this new great dress, we're looking at how does that fit into our budget. And so communication with your partner, communication with housemates, communication with family members can be really helpful. And especially, you know, right now it is a little bit tighter for most people right now with, you know, like we said, we're not making more money and more money and more money every year, but it does seem like inflation is a real thing. And you know, keeping up with all of the things that are available to us and the marketing and the advertising, it's really strong. So kind of pausing with that can be really helpful. But if we're going into, oh no, we're afraid of a recession, let's not impulse buy and be afraid and all the what ifs, that stress and that worry just creates a lot of overwhelm for you. It doesn't change the situation. So if we can, okay, what can I control? How can I take any kind of decision making in this? What will be helpful for me right now? And then one day at a time, one bill at a time.
Right.
I think is the most helpful just for our mental health.
And I think too, also for people who are catastrophizing things, and I'm guilty as well, but it's like I get online and the algorithm is telling me that everything is bad or everything is good, or, you know, all these things. And so it's like, oh, the economy's great, I'm going to go shopping. Oh, I feel terrible, I'm going to go shopping. But in those moments, like when we're catastrophizing things, so for me, one of the things I do is I'll just stop looking, stop scrolling, turn it off, pause, go for a walk, step outside, or just like do something that's, you know, bringing me joy, whether it's hanging out with my kids or reading a book or taking a bath. So one of the things I've learned as a parent is water seems to change everything.
Water.
So if my child is having just total meltdown, they're hungry, they're tired, you know, everything, like, let's just go take a bath. I don't want to take a bath. You know, as soon as they're in the water, it just changes their mindset. It's like, oh, this is play mode or this is relaxing mode. And it just changes their mood. So finding those triggers that can help you just change your mindset and mood have been really helpful for me when I'm going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. I will say for me, you know, whether it's, you know, social media, watching the news, whatever, all of our logarithms are a little different. So just be aware and talk to other people. It's really good to share your thoughts and feelings. I will say a lot of us sometimes feel alone, isolated. They feel like they're the only people going through some of these challenges. Find community, talk about those things, seek out a professional if you need, you know, extra support. But I do think it's important not to feel like you're alone. Find community, find support, talk about things, and don't try to like grit and get through it. But we do want to step back. We do want to find coping mechanisms, whether it's a bath, whether it's taking a walk, whether it's calling a friend, whether it's taking a nap, finding things that are healthy for us. And shopping isn't bad, but it can be that emotional shopping, that impulse shopping, that a celebratory shopping, that doomsday shopping. And if you're aware of that in yourself, then pause. And then like Jen was saying, come back to that cart, or let's not go to the store today, or let's, you know, put it in our cart and then wait until we have a moment and we're feeling a little more grounded.
Yes. And, you know, coming from the world of retail, and I'm not trying to like bash retailers or anything, like they're trying to, you know, provide jobs for people and it's a business. But the marketing budgets are high and their whole goal is to get people to spend money in their stores to raise their bottom dollar, you know, and help shareholders, all that good stuff. And so they're going to do anything in their power in order to get you to spend your money. That's why if you think of like Christmas time and Black Friday, Black Friday is moving up more and more. Those sales are happening sooner and sooner because businesses know consumers only have a set amount of money they're going to spend. And the sooner they can get that money, then they have confirmed you as their shopper and you are spending your money there as opposed to somewhere else. So that's why there's that big push for marketing, right? And so you are going to feel that, and you're going to, you know,
the sale is right now. We've got to get ready for that sale.
It's such a great deal. And so really being able to take a step back and know where your positive touch points are. Because even with, like, if I'm in a negative headspace, I know which friends to call if I want to keep going down that rabbit hole, but I know which friends to call whenever I need like a quick turnaround. It's like, no, this is going too far and you just need some positivity. So just really knowing yourself.
Yeah, be in touch with yourself. Have awareness of your finances. Be aware of how you're spending. And again, if we're getting into that stress, anxiety, worry, all the what ifs, step back and pause. What do I have control of? Is this going to help me later? Is this going to hinder me later? And just, just being more self-aware, I think is really the big key right here.
Think what works for you. This is another great opportunity. If you have that hobby or craft that's been sitting in the back of your closet for years, you're like, I'm going to get to that one day. Set down, your phone and start exploring new hobbies.
Yeah, those hobbies that have been waiting in the closet for you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening
today. Thanks for joining us today. If you
Please
have
like
any
and subscribe and share your comments below if you've enjoyed our episode.
That you'd like to share with us, let us know. And we can't wait to hear from you.
Have a good one.
Thanks for joining us on our podcast, Reframe and Reclaim. Please leave us information, comments, feedback, or anything that you're working on in your personal space. We'd love to hear how your reframe and reclaim process is going for you.